So, I recently watched that new movie Plane, and it made me want to look into aircraft which have disappeared. I've been doing a lot of ships which disappeared videos, and I wanted to switch it up. This topic, missing aircraft, is actually harder to research than ships which disappeared, but this one incident caught my eye. Today, we are going to be talking about the Boeing 727 that disappeared in Angola in 2003, or rather was stolen in 2003. In the modern day, yes, things can still just up and disappear even today, when we have all these incredible ways of finding things and tracking things. We have satellites which can look anywhere on Earth, in the most remote and desolate places. And that's a pastime I love doing, but this case shows that it is still very possible for things to just up and vanish even today. Again, I love looking on Google Earth and like the most remote places in the world and just seeing what's there. And yet, with all this technology, no trace of this plane has ever been found. And what makes it even worse is that we don't even truly know how many people were on board when this plane disappeared. What happened to these people? What happened to the plane? And where is it now? Who stole it and why? Well, it joins the same camp as ships like the Waratah, vanishing somewhere on Earth so utterly that it is never seen again. Let's strap in and take to the skies to investigate this unsolved mystery. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and check out my similar videos about ships which have disappeared. Enjoy! The aircraft which would be stolen on the 25th of May 2003 was a Boeing 727. The plane had been built back in 1975 and it flew for American Airlines for 25 years. Its last registered owners were a company based out of Miami, Florida called Aerospace Sales and Leasing. Keep them in mind. Their president will get brought up a little bit later in the video. This specific Boeing's official registered name was N844AA. There's not really much information I can find about the history of this specific plane because it wasn't really noteworthy before it vanished. But at the time it disappeared, it was at 4 de Fevereiro Airport, Luanda, which is a large city in the African country Angola. It was grounded at the time and basically was just acquiring fees. Lots and lots of fees. It was basically a money pit, occurring more than $4 million in unpaid airport fees. The plane had been sitting there for 14 months, but it was being converted along with another plane for use by its new owners, IRS Airlines Limited, which is based out of Nigeria in West Africa. Now, if you don't know what a Boeing 727 is, or if you're just not a plane expert like me, I'll give you a bit of a picture here. The Boeing 727 is a narrow-bodied passenger airliner, shockingly developed by Boeing. Who'd have guessed? By the time production on new 727s ceased, 1,832 had been built, and of these 1,832, 118 were involved with fatal incidents. One of those incidents was in 1990 when another 727 disappeared. The last passenger flight of a Boeing 727 was flown in 2019. Now then, with all of us on the same page about what type of plane we're dealing with, let's talk about the Waratah of the skies and get to the utter disappearance of this airplane. On May 25, 2003, at 1700 hours local time, two men are believed to have boarded N844AA. One of the two was an American pilot and flight engineer, Ben C. Padilla, and the other was a hired mechanic from the Republic of the Congo named John M. Mutantu. On its own, not the strangest thing ever, two people getting on a plane, but neither of these two were certified to fly a Boeing 727 aircraft. Of the two, it is thought Padilla was the one at the controls when what happened next occurred. There was also some discrepancy about just how many people boarded the plane and when. Some said they only saw one person, or that the two boarded the plane well before the following incident occurred. But the main theory seems to be that these two were the ones to board the plane, so we'll go with that for now. So, suddenly, without making any communication with the control tower, the plane began taxiing, which is what a plane does before it takes flight. Without receiving any kind of clearance, it maneuvered onto a runway. Though the tower tried to make contact with the plane, they heard no answer, and it began to speed down the runway. Still getting no response, they watched it take off without any lights on, and NA-44AA vanished into the sky. The plane was heading southwest out over the Atlantic Ocean, where it disappeared. We'll get into theories about who may have been involved and where it may have gone in a minute. One fear at the time, though, was that terrorists might have been involved, and again, we'll get to why in a minute, but I don't really buy that one personally. I feel like the plane would have reappeared if terrorists had been planning to use it for something. So, the plane flies away and vanishes. At the time it flew away, the plane had 14,000 US gallons of fuel in it, giving it a range of 1,500 miles, or 1,300 nautical miles, or 2,400 kilometers, before it would have run out of fuel. Assuming it didn't crash into the ocean somewhere, I wonder if it didn't land and get more fuel from somewhere. If it was an organized theft, they had to have a plan in place, but no debris from the plane have ever been found on land or out at sea, and neither of the two men have ever been seen again either. Padilla's sister later made a statement, fearing her brother was being held hostage after flying the plane to its destination, or that it might have even crashed somewhere in the remote sections of Africa, which is a fair enough of a fear if he didn't know how to fly that type of plane professionally. Also, if that's the case, it'd be hard to even find with satellites. A lot of pictures from that corner of the world, like the Republic of the Congo, are not high quality images. If you get close enough to the ground, anyway. The images aren't bad, but just not as high quality as you'd get in places like big cities. You could probably find a plane, though. You can clearly see the shipwreck on North Sentinel Island if you know where to look. Which, how that came to be there could make a video topic in the future because it's quite the story. I would be down to do that if anyone's interested. But it is kind of out in the open on a beach and easy to see and not buried in a lush jungle, which would make it significantly harder to find. Point is, something could definitely hide there if it was in just the right spot. Though, I'm not sure why it would or could crash there if it was in West Africa and flying west over the Atlantic Ocean when it vanished. It wasn't heading east over the continent, it was heading out to sea, so very weird. So, the plane has been stolen and it is not to be found anywhere. There was a big fear at the time that this plane was stolen, so it could be used by terrorists. Remember, this was not even 2 years after the September 11th attacks in America. So the fear of planes being used as weapons of mass destruction was still very fresh in people's minds. By June 19, 2003, the White House, however, did admit through a spokesperson that they had very few leads on where to look. Said spokesman made the following statement, quote, "We don't have any reliable assessments about what this portends, what it could be, who may be behind it, but it is an issue that is being worked on," unquote. As you can imagine, the CIA and the FBI were both involved with the worldwide search for the plane. In July 2003, there was a possible sighting of the plane reported in Geneva, but this was dismissed by the US State Department. Still, reading an archived report from before it was dismissed is quite something. I'll quote a few bits from one online article now. The mystery of a missing Boeing 727 cargo plane that caused panic in the United States intelligence circles appears to have been solved. The aircraft, which vanished without a trace from Angola's main airport, turned up last week in Geneva. The plane was feared to be in the hands of international terrorists. Immediately after its disappearance, American intelligence operators said the plane most likely was taken for a criminal endeavor, such as drugs or weapons smuggling. But they did not rule out the possibility it was stolen for use in a terrorist attack, and were making every effort to get to the bottom of the mystery. A Western diplomat in Freetown said it was more likely the plane had been simply snatched from Luanda because its owner was reluctant to pay year-long airport taxes. There's always a shady side to business around here, he said. But as for the terrorism stuff, that sounds like a complete load of rubbish. They were so confident, but it turned out to not be the plane in the end. The search continued after this. Classified documents, which were made public in 2010 by Cablegate, which, if you don't know what that was when a bunch of classified documents got leaked on WikiLeaks. The leaked documents talked about how multiple countries, including Nigeria and Sri Lanka, were searched, but nothing was found. Ground searches of multiple airports in Nigeria were actually conducted, but again, nothing was found. Nigerian diplomats said in a telegram that they did not believe the plane landed at any major airports in their country. And again, the airports were thoroughly searched by ground teams, led by the diplomats from the country and a regional security officer from the US. No sign of the plane or any traces of it were found at all. This is an ongoing theme in this case. Nothing has ever been found. No stray pieces, no debris, nothing. After it was stolen, it flew off into the sunset. Sunrise, mid-afternoon sun, it was evening, but you go with whatever cinematic image you want to imagine. And it was never seen again. It just vanished. Ah, this is where the fun begins. Theories about what happened. Unfortunately, we don't have very many to go with this one, though. Personally, my own, unless it was heading to maybe South America or double back and flew over Africa, maybe towards the Middle East or to a country in Africa where a group like Boko Haram or Western education is forbidden was waiting to receive it. If the idea it was stolen for or on behalf of a terrorist group is true, I feel like it might be somewhere on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, unless it crashed again over land by doubling back at some point. I don't know. I don't really have a solid theory for this one because there's just not much to go on. One theory says that not really where the plane went, but the motive of whoever was responsible was to create a repeat of the September 11 attacks. But again, this obviously never materialized, and again, there is no evidence a terrorist group was actually involved. The only people we know for sure were involved were the one or two people who were on the plane when it flew away. Another theory is that this theft was actually just a massive case of insurance fraud. US intelligence suggested that the plane was in a state of disrepair, so the airport faked it being stolen so they could get the insurance money from the aircraft. Or not even the airport. Someone who was connected with the plane, Aerospace Sales and Leasing's president, Murray Joseph, who had inspected the plane 2 weeks before it disappeared, has been involved with such things in the past. But ultimately, there is no real proof for this. Another theory also suggests that the plane might have crashed in or been shot down over the Atlantic Ocean. But again, we have no proof of this. All we know for sure is that this giant airplane took off into the sky in 2003 with no one but those flying it knowing the destination it was bound for, and it has never been seen again. To this day, the plane remains missing, and it has left us without any traces of it. Imagine if it wasn't some grand, thought-out theft and conspiracy, and it was actually just two dudes wanting to see if they could pull off stealing a plane and ditching it. Would I be mad or impressed at that point? Hmm. This kind of does remind me of the Waratah. It's just off-putting when something like this, be it a plane or an ocean liner, just vanishes without a trace of it ever being found. Especially today, with all of our modern tech. It's eerie, but often they take human beings with them. And since, ships and planes can kind of seem alive in their own way too, it's just like it makes you wonder what happened to them. What happened to this plane after it was stolen? Do you think we'll ever know? I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe one day it'll turn up having been sitting in, no pun intended, plain sight for the last 20 years. Or maybe someone will spot it just sitting in some remote desert in Africa or the Middle East. Or maybe it'll never be found. I just, and many others, wonder what happened to this plane. Is she still out there, hidden and forgotten? Who knows? It gives me the same feeling I get when I think of missing ships like the Waratah, though. So that's going to do it. Sit on the facts and everything we've covered for a minute, and then tell me what you think happened. And if you want more videos on missing aircraft, go check out my videos like this on missing ships, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and have a good one, everyone.